Good morning again, HI 121 students. This is a short video to go over the study guide for this coming weekend's exam on the first 5 chapters. Again, we slow way down after this now, and we've done a lot of material here in a few weeks. But again, I like doing this because everybody is fresh, and as we get further and further into the semester, people become bogged down with other responsibilities and not as much is accomplished. Lao Tzu we talked about earlier in ancient China, and his famous book, The Art of War, is still consulted by military historians today. The Confucian philosophy is concerned with the duty of human beings to work to improve life here on earth, which the Taoists did not necessarily concern themselves with. And then in the aftermath of the Taoist period in the dynastic cycle are when the legalists came in, and that is when the first emperor, Xing Huangdi, established his reign. And that has been pretty much a part of Chinese history up into the 20th century. The family was the basis of pretty much everything in China in all of those different areas listed. The mountainous topography of Greece had consequences in its history. They are a trading and seafaring nation as a result because they are not self-sufficient in food production. And they were a force in the Mediterranean region for hundreds and hundreds of years until the Peloponnesian Wars, where they basically, Athens and Sparta, destroyed themselves. Lycurgus was a stern lawgiver of ancient Sparta, and many of those rules will lead to Sparta becoming a totalitarian state as they conquered more areas around Sparta. In order to control them, they have a militaristic society. Children are taken from their mothers at a very early age, and they're basically trained to be soldiers until they're well into their 20s. And I don't remember the exact year now. It was in the other video, but it's at a very late age before they are considered to be full citizens. Marathon, Phidippides allegedly, urban legendly, runs from the plain of Marathon back to Athens to tell of the victory over the Persians, and then he dropped dead after running 26.2 miles, and that is a running race to this day. Polytheistic religions are believers in more than one god, and all of those ancient societies and civilizations we talked about engaged in that practice. Monotheism, people of the book, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam believe in the one God and his teachings that are in their different religious tracts like the Bible or the Quran. Thucydides wrote the history of the Peloponnesian Wars. Aristophanes was another famous Greek writer. He was a very famous comedic writer. Lysistrata was a famous work of Aristophanes. The Socratic method is still used by educators today in the question and answer technique, which is very similar to some Confucian principles. It's about looking within in order to find what truth is. Through that dialogue, through that process, a person comes to a conclusion through answering and questioning. Plato believed that the rule of the philosopher king was the best form of government, but he warned against resorting to it all the time. Aristocracy is probably safer to have because after the philosopher king dies, chances are the person that comes in next is not as skilled. And this is what happens in many, many different civilizations in world history. The ones who come after some good rulers are inferior and incompetent, and society declines as a result. Pericles was a very successful philosopher king during the golden age of Athens in 5th century before Common Era. Arabia was not conquered by Alexander, and I believe there was a map in the one video that went over this. Characteristics of the Republic are those listed: local autonomy, they have to provide soldiers, and Latins were given full citizenship. The Punic Wars were fought between Rome and Carthage, and this is what established the Roman Republic as the dominant group in the Mediterranean. Carthage was in North Africa, basically where Libya is today. Julius Caesar was part of the ruling triumvirate, the rule of three, and the clash between the triumvirate led to the collapse of the Republic. And eventually they will fight wars after Caesar is assassinated in 44 before Common Era, and out of that the Judeo-Claudian dynasty comes in, and the Pax Romana, which takes place in the 2nd century Common Era, basically from the 90s through the end of the 100s. They had stable government and a prosperous society. Those who believe that God should be the ruler of government, those are believers in a theocracy. There are theocracies on the planet today, such as the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Indus Valley people created that system of writing that historians and anthropologists cannot decipher today. The Harappan civilization, not much is known about it other than their artwork, which has been discovered in many of those ruins. Northern and southern Mesopotamia created the first empire after being conquered by Sargon. And here are some of the characteristics of the ancient Egyptians. They are also believers in more than one god. They believed in this theocratic society. And they also believed in an afterlife and in reincarnation. The Aryans established what we called in English the caste system, the Jati, and Siddhartha was dissatisfied with this system, and he attempted to find enlightenment, and his conclusions led to the founding of the Buddhist religion. And Buddhism and Hinduism have a belief in the sacredness of all life. Confucian society is governed by the 5 basic relationships. We talked about that: father, son, husband, wife, friend to friend, ruler over the ruled, older brother, younger brother. These come out of probably Mencius, because he's the one that really wrote down all of the Confucian classics. Confucius was not popular in his lifetime. This man was responsible for that. Diocletian cut the empire in half, and eventually Constantine will recognize Christianity in 313. The main thing to remember about the first chapter, the Neolithic Revolution, leads to all of these civilizations that we are studying in this first part of world civilizations. Farming and agriculture led to humans being less nomadic, and that was the end of the Paleolithic era of hunting and gathering as being the basis for existence. Virtue is discussed ad nauseum by the Greeks. What is virtue? This is an ongoing question, ladies and gentlemen. The Nile River flooding was gradual and predictable, and because of that, that is a very fertile agricultural area. The Sumerians had a number system based on the number 60. The Visigoths pretty much conquered Rome. After that, it still exists for a time, but they're the ones that really wiped it out from being of any significance. Conspirators in the Roman Senate assassinated Caesar, and in the Old Kingdom, the pyramids were built. Study this document, and you will have no trouble on this weekend's exam.